Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. Well, other than the fact that there's no plug. Um so I got to talking and yeah, my mouth started moving, and then of course, as the case with many people, then my mind started moving. And I realized that this is sort of an important topic because I think it has a lot to do with how we move forward with electric vehicles. So um, I know for a lot of people, they believe that plug-in hybrids or plug-in range extended electric vehicles, basically uh, smaller battery electric vehicles that also have some sort of a gasoline or fossil fuel or internal combustion powered backup that extends their range, and that can be something like the Prius Prime, where you're only getting maybe 20 miles, or a Energy, Ford Energy, where you're only getting maybe 20 miles of range, all up to like a Chevy Volt, where you're currently getting over 50, or all the way up to like an i3, where you're possibly getting over 100, right? And I'm up here on top of a mountain next to a lake, and I've been here before, in the Volt, in the first generation Volt, and getting from town to here, which is just an everyday drive for a lot of people, uh, it used up the entire battery pack, that the Volt, all 10 to 11 kilowatt hours of usable energy. So just to get up here, I used all of my energy, and then so that means to get back, it's gasoline time, and uh, and the reason I bring that up is, yeah, plug-in hybrids, plug-in electrics, they're great vehicles, for city dwellers, right? Because if you look at a commute in a city, it's typically 40 miles or less, and it it's going to you're going to be using electricity most of the time. And then it gives you the flexibility of, if you need to make a long trip, you don't have to rely on the public charging infrastructure. You'll be able to make the trip in the same amount of time as you could make it in just a pure fossil fuel car. Uh, so it makes sense for a lot of city dwellers. And the counter argument I see to focusing a little bit more on what rural Americans need and their driving needs is that, oh well, there just aren't as many of them. Well, okay, fine. A majority of people at this point in time do live in a city in the United States. That's objectively, quantifiably true. But what percentage don't? I don't actually know the numbers off the top of my head. Is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it, even 10 to 15%? And the reason I bring that up is, right now, plug-in vehicles comprise, oh, what, 1, 2% of new car sales. But you look down that list, and this is my point. If you look down that list, there are really only three, four, five cars on the list that actually make sense for buyers in rural areas. And buyers in rural areas also do tend to be more price sensitive. So that knocks a few of those other cars off the list. And why do I say it? Well, it's the battery electrics are basically worthless unless you have, let's just face it, over 200 miles of range. It's not a consideration, um, just because a lot of times your daily routine will be 150 miles in ideal conditions, right? Not even counting what happens if conditions get poor. And then the plug-in electrics, well, they don't really have any purpose, right? Because it's an added cost, added complexity, uh, when you're essentially going to be running off of gasoline anyway. I gave my mom my 2015 Volt, and given where she is and how she drives, at least half of her driving to two-thirds of her driving is on gasoline. It just is. She gets to a location and she uses up all of her electricity, and then she has to get home again. And no, you're not going to sit around for 4 hours recharging a plug-in electric vehicle. The whole point is so you can make trips as quickly as you can in a non-electric vehicle, in a gas-powered vehicle. So, so what's the solution then, right? I mean, I personally, and I've mentioned this in other videos, I personally think I'm sitting in one of them. The Tesla Model 3 could also be that solution coming in at $35,000, though it's not exactly the kind of car that a lot of rural Americans would be drawn to. Doesn't necessarily have the utility, and frankly, it's just trying too hard to be cool. And that's just not a car that a lot of rural Americans would be drawn to. And I think ignoring a market that represents 10, possibly 20 times the current uptake or the current sales of electric vehicles, I think it's worth noting. Now, I know GM, their intent is to say, oh, well, we'll do uh, plug-in vehicles for, or plug-in extended range electric vehicles for trucks and things like that. Maybe, I don't know how many people you're going to even win over with that, though. Again, at that point, you might as well just have a hybrid. I mean, at that point, really, yeah, maybe something with 10 miles of range, enough to absorb regenerative braking coming down a hill, but maybe that's about it. Anyway, like I said, this is sort of a just an off the cuff discussion, but I do feel like there's a large minority of the population that's being ignored by our current offerings. And you can't, people are a lot more pragmatic than they're given credit for. And you can't blame rural buyers for ignoring or scoffing at electric vehicles when almost none of them meet their practical needs. Uh, and so, like I said, I don't know what the solution is other than offering more cars like this, a little less, you know, uh, pomp and circumstance, a little less cool factor, and a little bit more utility, a little bit more usability. Um, yeah, that's how you're going to win over, that rural population of vehicle owners who up to this point have just turned their backs on electric vehicles. Anyway, let me know what you think. I mean, I'm interested to hear everyone's perspective on this. Uh, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And thank you for watching.